Hi, I'm Old Norse Specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford. And if you're following along with the new series of Old Norse lessons on my channel beginning in 2020, this is part 3, in which I'm going to talk about the personal pronouns, I, you, he, she, it, etc., and how those work. Now, in the previous lesson, I mentioned that English preserves traces of case inflection, right, the nominative, accusative, genitive, dative forms, only in personal pronouns. So when you look at I, you've got an old nominative, me is an old accusative, and you can tell because they still work like nominatives and accusatives mostly, although this is getting mixed up in English over time. So I walk in the mountains, but the mountains enchant me, right? You can't mix I and me without making ungrammatical sentences that a competent English speaker would never produce. Now, I mentioned in the last video that those categories, nominative, accusative, genitive, dative, which, if you're not familiar with those, go back and look at lesson 2, apply to anything that's a noun or that takes the place of a noun, like a personal pronoun, I, you, or that in some way is adjunct to a noun, right? An adjective that describes the noun, a determiner, the, this, that sort of thing. But the most intuitive place where case comes up, of course, for English speakers is in the personal pronouns, because we still do it. So let's take a look at how those are actually inflected. Let's start with I. Here are the forms. Ek, mich, min, mer. Now, if you speak German, that's probably not too unfamiliar looking. And of course, German maintains the same sort of inflection, actually sort of reduced relative to something like Old High German or Old Norse. But the forms, of course, ich, mich, mein, mir, are quite similar to the Old Norse forms here. Now, again, I will always go in the order nominative, accusative, genitive, dative. Some other places you're going to look and have different orders in that, but this is the order I always stick with. So where do we use these? Well, I is ek, so ek am, I am. Mich is me as a direct object, accusative, right? So þeir drópu mig, they killed me. Mín is, of course, related to English mine. This is the possessive form, although actually Old Norse does not use the straight genitive to show possession. It makes an adjective out of the genitive form, which we'll look at in a later chapter about adjectives. Still, mín is the building block for the possessive form, so you would say, for example, kona mín, my woman or my wife. And then mer is the dative or indirect object, so þeir góvu mér gjöf, they gave me a gift. Now, in the plural, we have we, ver, and then us, vor, us. So we, ver erum, we are. Us is the accusative, so of course this looks like English, us. So, for example, you might say, þeir sáu us, they saw us. And then vor is our, or it's the building block for our. So you might say, for example, born vor, our children. Notice that in Old Norse, typically the possessive form follows what it is possessing rather than precedes it, right? In English we would say our kids. In Old Norse you say more often, although there's no rule about it, you're more often going to say children our. And then us, same as the accusative, is also the dative. So þeir góvu us gjöf, they gave us a gift. Now, that's your singular and your plural. Old Norse also has a dual that is a special form of the word we for just two. So just a couple talking about themselves. In that case, we two is vit in the nominative, that's we two. And then you have okr, us two in the accusative, okkar, our two, belonging to us two, in the genitive, and okkar in the dative dual. Now, in modern Icelandic, these dual forms have actually become the new plurals. So today in Icelandic, when you say we, no matter how many people you're talking about, you say við, which comes from the dual rather than something coming from the plural ver. All right, so in that case, of course, what you've got is við elskumst, we love one another, speaking of only two people. Þeir sáu okkur, they saw us too, if I'm just talking about me and one other person. Born okkur, our kids, and þeir gáfu okkur gjöf, they gave us too, but only, say me and my wife, a gift. All right, now you, the singular, this is something actually where English can be a little bit tricky because, of course, certainly in formal English, there's the same word you for both singular and plural, right? You can mean only one person, it can mean, you know, all 7 billion people, however many there are on the planet. But in Old Norse, there is a distinction between not just singular and plural, but just like in the first person, there's also a dual for just y'all two. Now, when I was teaching Old Norse at UCLA, I encouraged students to translate the plural you with whatever their particular dialect of English uses for the plural you, because most of our dialects have innovated with something. In the US, it's usually you guys for the plural, or y'all. And those used to be real regionally restricted, but I find that y'all is kind of gathering steam in some communities outside of the South, and you guys is gathering steam in some urban areas well outside of where it used to be. I mean, you hear people in Houston who say you guys. Anyway, whatever particular thing you use, I'm going to say y'all for the plural. So singular, we have thu, thick, thín, þeir. Notice that's almost just like the I forms, right? Ek, mik, mín, mer, but replace the M with thorn in the accusative, genitive, and dative. So, thu ert, you are, but just one person. Ek sé thik, I see you, one person. Thín would be the building block for the possessive form. This, of course, is cognate with Older English thine. And actually, you can see Older English in these thou, thee, thine, if you're familiar with like King James or Shakespeare English, or or most 20th century translators of Old Norse English. So, born thín, your kids. And then þeir is the dative form for the indirect object. So, ek gav þeir gjöf, I gave you a gift, just one person. Plural is þeir, yður, yðvar, yður. Now, the older form of þeir, which looks like, of course, the dative singular, is actually without the thorn, but you'll only find that in pretty old poetry for the most part. You'll find that in some of the Poetic Edda, for example. So here I'll use the more often encountered form with the thorn in front. So þeir eruð, y'all are. Ek sé yður, I see y'all. Born yðvar, y'all, or yður, y'all's kids. Again, yðvar is only the building block for the possessive, so don't get too attached to that specific form without endings on it. And ek gav yður gjöf, I gave y'all a gift, maybe 10 people a gift. But I'm specifically talking to just 2 people, just a couple, or pair. I'm going to use the dual. And so there we have the forms þitt, ykkur, ykkar, ykkar. And once again, very similar to the first person dual forms, the we two forms, just with thorn and y instead of v and o at the beginning of these forms. So y'all two, you two love one another. Þitt, what would that come out to be? Thick elskitsk. And then I see y'all two, right? I'm looking and I see 2 people over here. Ek sé ykkur. Y'all two's kids. Born ykkur. And I gave y'all two a gift. Ek gav ykkur Gjov. All right. So that's your first and your second person forms, your I, your we, your you, your y'all. Now, after a quick word from my sponsor, I will talk about the third person forms, the he, she, it, and they words. All right, so now let's talk about the third person forms. He is han. Strangely for Old Norse, the accusative han is the same. So you say both he sees me, han ser mig, and I see him with the same word, ek se han. A little bit unusual for Old Norse. The genitive, which in this case is used as the normal possessive, so you don't have to modify this in any way, is hans. Now you can kind of see there you've got that normal masculine genitive ending s just added to han, so it's he's, his. So you might say kona hans, his woman or his wife, hester hans, his horse, born hans, his kids, what have you. The dative is honum, so I gave him a gift, ek gav honum gjov. And then in the plural, let's actually, before talking about the plural they, let's talk about the singular she and it, because actually all the theys kind of resemble one another. So she, we have hon, then accusative hanna, genitive hennar, and dative henni. So hon her, she is here. I see her, ek se hanna. Her man or her husband, mother hennar, or her kids, born hennar, or her horse, hester hennar. Just like with Hans, you don't actually have to modify hennar to agree with whatever it's possessing, unlike the my and you, mine and your words. So, and there you can also see that it's a normal feminine genitive ending, ar, just like gjov, gjavar, something like that, just added to the root for she or her, hon, han, hen. And then I gave her a gift, ek gav henni gjov. It is thought, accusative thought. Now, it's a general rule, it's quite consistent in Old Norse, that the nominative and accusative of any neuter is the same. So thought is exactly what you'd expect. It is here, thought her, I see it, ek se thought. It's possessive, it's thes, just like Hans and Hennar, you can use that for anything. It doesn't have to be modified, so thes, born, its kids, maybe we're talking about an animal. All right, and then the dative is thvi, so I gave it a gift, ek gav thvi gjov. Again, maybe I'm talking about some kind of animal that I don't view very personally. Let's talk about the they words. You actually have different masculine, feminine, and neuter forms of they. Now the genitive and the dative are all the same, but the nominative and accusative is different depending on if I'm talking about a group of only men, a group of only women, or a mixed group. Or, of course, if I'm talking about things that just have that particular grammatical gender. So if I'm talking about trees or mountains, I'm going to use the neuter because tre, tree, is neuter, fjall, mountain, is neuter. Say a few ravens fly by, raven, raven is masculine, so I'm going to speak of the ravens with the masculine form of they. One thing that's a little bit interesting about Old Norse is, unlike Romance languages where you use the masculine form for groups of people, as long as just one man is in a mixed sex group, you actually use the neuter to talk about mixed sex groups. So their, the masculine being used of humans, implies that it's only men. Thar, the feminine, implies that it's only women. Thou, you're withholding judgment. It could be men or women, or it could be both, right? So an army will often be referred to with masculine words, whereas, you know, a group of people all together, perhaps migrating to a new place, might be neuter because it's going to include men and women. All right, so the masculine forms, their, nominative, thol, accusative. Of course, that's just like the word for then, but usually context will make that clear. And then genitive theira, dative thame. And the genitive and dative will be the same for feminine and neuter as well. So they are here, their eru her. I see them, but I'm just talking about men, exe thol. Their weapons, Waffen theira. This also doesn't need to be modified to agree, unlike the my and your words. And then I gave them a gift, but I'm just talking about men, ek gab theim gjaf. Little trivia fact, their, thame, theira are the direct source of English they, them, their. We don't use the Old English forms of those plural personal pronouns. We actually directly borrowed the Old Norse forms. Feminine, it's thar, and then again, theira, thame. So they are here, but I'm just talking about women. Thar, eru her. I see them. Again, just talking about women. Exe, thar. And then the neuter, thou. Remember, nominative and accusative of a neuter will always be the same. So you just need to learn one new form in a sense, because then genitive is theira, dative is thame, just like masculine and feminine. So they are here, mixed group of men and women. Thou, eru her. I see them, mixed group of men and women. Exe, thou. All right, and now notice that there is no dual for the third person. There's no dual for they too. The dual forms are only used for we two and you two. If you have just two of anything, two trees or something, you're still just using the plural. You only have the distinct dual forms for I, for we two and you two. So these personal pronouns are worth learning very early on, because of course you're going to see these all the time. And I'm not going to stop to explain from here on out when I give you the forms of, say, a verb, and I give you the first person form and I say, ek, the second person form, and I say thu, the third person form, and I say han, hon, or thought. I'm going to assume that you know these words going forward. I'm going to put a few exercises at the very end of this so that you can practice, and then the answers to the exercises will be later in the video. If you have questions, remarks about this, you're also welcome to reach out to me on Patreon for clarifications and that sort of thing. For now, from beautiful Colorado, let me wish you all the best.